Welcome to Unpacking the Athlete podcast, hosted by yours truly, Rob Martin. Welcome to Unpacking the Athlete, a podcast dedicated to diving deep into what makes athletes who they are. Today's guest is from Michigan and has done well in running and climbing. Some of his top accomplishments are as follows. He has done 8 country high points in Africa. He has completed the Camino de Santiago. He has run a marathon with no training. And he has done 17 winter 4,000ers in New Hampshire with 2 winter traverse attempts. Our guest today is Kahler Kranz, who has also done a century on a bike with no training. Welcome, Kahler. I'm excited to learn more about you and your adventures.
Sweet, man. I'm excited to talk about them. Thanks for having me on.
Glad you could be here. First question is always a little off the wall, and this isn't too off the wall, but I think it'll be a fun question for you. If you could pick one mountain to climb out of these 3, which one would you choose and why? Number 1, Everest. Number 2, Kilimanjaro. Number 3, Denali.
Interesting. Okay. Denali definitely piques my interest the most out of any of those 3. Everest is expensive, and it's something that intrigues me, but it's not something that I have a burning passion to do anytime soon. Kilimanjaro also sounds fun, but it's not, at least in my mind, something that I would be like immensely proud of or need to do a whole ton of training for. Denali seems like the real winner out of those 3, especially given just all the stuff that would go into that. It'd be super fun to plan that trip out and get everything ready for it.
I didn't think you were going to pick Denali, but I think that's a good pick, actually.
Fair. Why didn't you think I'd pick Denali?
I just figured you'd pick one of the first 2 just because of I just feel like they're more like sought after, maybe.
That's fair. I have talked to people that have climbed Everest, and they have dissuaded me a little. Like, they had an amazing experience, but just their opinion was that the real mountaineering is to be done elsewhere.
Gotcha. All right, well, we'll move on. And wondering if you can explain and talk about the 8 country high points in Africa.
Yeah, I'd love to. About 2.5 years ago, I saw this YouTube video, and this guy named Eric Gilbertson was being interviewed, and the video is basically a breakdown of every country high point, which, if you don't know what that is, it's just the tallest point in any country. Sometimes it's not even the top of a mountain. It could be a hill, or it could be just some random point in a flatland, or it could be halfway up a mountain because the tallest mountain in that area is actually the summit is in the next country over. So you just have to get like halfway up one to get the first country's high point. But it was going over all of these, and there's, by most people's definitions, 196. So that's all the UN member countries, Antarctica, and 2 more might be like Monaco and the Vatican. There's a lot of complication with this kind of project, and there's certain mountains like, I think it's called Gengar Punsem in Bhutan, which is the tallest unclimbed mountain in the world, and climbing is completely banned and has been since at least 20 years ago, if not 30. And so there's certain logistical challenges that come along with this challenge, but the most exciting part is that no one has ever done it. And the guy who is most likely to finish it was the one being interviewed in this video I watched, and it lit a fire in me. I had to see this goal out, or at least learn as much as I possibly could about this goal so that I could do it myself. And I watched this video 4 times over, and I decided that I had no idea where to start. And so I emailed Eric Gilbertson, who's the number 1 country high pointer. And I said, hey, I want to be your adventure apprentice. I want you to take me on your next trip and show me what this is all about. And so he said, I'm going on an expedition to Kazakhstan, but when I get back, we'll talk about this. I'll bring you to Africa. And so I just super excited all summer. He gets back from the expedition and we start making plans. He sends me a spreadsheet like, this is all taken care of. Buy these 3 flights and I'll meet you in Togo. And landed in Lomé and we hit the ground running right away. Got 3 high points within the first day, Ghana, Benin, and Togo. And that was relatively unproblematic compared to the rest of the trip. But at the time, I thought that we had really gotten a little bit more dangerous than I thought we would. On the Togo high point, we were up at the top and we had a surveying machine, like some big mechanism that Eric knew how to use that we would have to use on a few of the high points to survey the elevation to figure out which ones were actually the tallest in that country. So out of the 8, I think we had to do that in 4 of them. There was a few contenders based on internet data that could possibly be the high point given like margin of error. But we got our machine out on the Togo high point, the first one that we did of the trip. And there's like a military outpost on the top because there's a big radio tower. And we've probably been there for 15 minutes. They come over with big rifles and say, you're done. Get out of here. Take that down. We got to ask you some questions. And so I'm already getting a little scared, but we had a third guy with us, Serge, that spoke French as well as our driver in Togo. And so we worked it out. And we, delayed them a little bit so we could get a better measurement, but we took it down, got out of there. But they did ban us from climbing one of the contenders in that country. So I thought after these first 3, we got the dangerous part out of the way. That was the one we knew there'd be some military on the top of. And we get on a plane and we head to Senegal. We were there to get the Gambia high point, which is Senegal totally surrounds Gambia. We got that pretty unproblematic, 4 contenders, had a blast. It was a really fun country to travel through. Spent about 3-4 days there. And then from there we flew to Conakry, Guinea. And that's where the trip really got interesting. We had about 10, 11 days, if I'm remembering right, in Guinea. And the first night we hit the ground running. We landed in the dark. And as we're getting off the airplane, it's just chaos. I've never been in an airport that was so just do whatever you want. There was just no organization, and that was totally out of my wheelhouse. I was already a little nervous from that, and we step off the plane onto the bridge. First thing I see is a 80-foot tall portrait of the new military coup overthrow president of the country. And that was 2 months before we got there. Oh, okay, I remember reading about that. Didn't expect the big portrait, but we saw that in quite a few spots. And the driving in all of West Africa is quite different than in the U.S., but especially different in Conakry. And I was stressing out quite a bit sitting in the back of the car as we're leaving the airport. I just thought, man, I'm going to close my eyes. We have a local driver. We hired him for a reason. He knows what he's doing. We're not going to get hit by anybody. I just need to calm down. And right as I'm starting to fall asleep, we get T-boned in a traffic circle. And everybody's heads are hitting the glass. And there was only a few seat belts in the car. Not everybody had one. And just oh man, it's real now. This isn't, it's an adventure, not a vacation. So
that's pretty crazy.
It was much.
How did you convince this guy to take you on this? I mean, you can't just be some random person saying, hey, take me with you. And they're like, oh, sure. I mean, you had to do some convincing, right?
Yeah, I thought I would have to do a lot more, to be honest with you. I think within 2-3 emails sent from me, he was already like, yeah, this is a great trip for you to come on. We got an extra spot. And I was a little taken aback by that myself. Like, oh, he just, okay, sure. I'll go on your trip. I mean, the base email was just like, I really like what you're doing. I want to do it myself. And here are all the things I've done in the past. And I listed kind of my adventure resume. I don't think country high pointers get too much fame and fortune. So I don't know if I have a feeling I was the first person to ask.
Okay. Yeah, but you put your resume there and you saw that you've done some things and you could probably keep up and maybe be a help instead of a hindrance. Yeah. I think one thing that helped was he went to MIT, Eric did. And so he did a lot of climbing in the White Mountains. Yep.
When he was in school. And that was my main resume item at the time was, I've done all this in the White Mountains in the winter. And I think he saw that and knew the difficulty of it and just assumed, okay, if he can do that, he'll be good here.
Yeah, okay. That makes sense. My next question is, with the military guys coming at you with guns, what did you guys do to kind of put them at ease, to make them at least go away and allow you to leave without taking you in somewhere?
Well, first, we went down and bought a permit. We didn't have one originally, which I thought was a little silly, but, I'm the apprentice on this trip, and so I'm not asking those kind of questions. But we passed this booth at the beginning, and we stop and talk to the guy and just say, no, we're not paying for the permit. And I asked as we drove past, like, well, guys, why didn't we pay for that? Like, it was $10 US split between the car. We can afford it. And they just said, that guy just set up for tourists. Like, this isn't, we don't actually have to pay that. If you're not from around here, you just pay him because you assume you have to. And so we got up. The military guys first asked us, like, hey, where's your permit? We went, nope, we don't have one. So they made us go down first to get that, just in the car. And when we got back up, the goal really wasn't to tell them that everything was okay and we had permission. They really wanted us to go to a local, like, judge or some kind of local leader and get permission and, like, have them inspect our equipment to make sure that we weren't foreign military spies or whatever. And my group pretty much figured that we would get all of our equipment taken, and we had insurance on it, but it was about $5,000 and it was borrowed from a surveying company. And so we didn't want to do that either. So we basically just stalled and told them we would leave until we had enough time spent on the measurement where it would be like quality enough for us to accept it as a measurement.
Huh. Okay, that's interesting. So you didn't pay the military guys to leave. You didn't give them cash and say, "Hey, here you go. We're just."
I think we did.
Oh, okay.
We probably did. I think that was probably the first try. It was like, here's a couple bucks. Thank you for keeping us safe. Here you go. We're gonna stay here and do this. And I think we did that, and they just went like, "This is too important. Like, we care a little bit more than that. We'll get in trouble if you guys are actually doing anything." So.
Right. Okay. That's kind of funny.
But there was plenty of that. We're not we're not too good for that. That was like, that's just how things work. Like, even at the airports and stuff, some computer system would mess up and one of our flights wouldn't show up in the computer. And we just like find somebody, like, here's $20, help us figure this out. And they'd get it done right away. Like, it was, I don't know if that's like the most ethical thing. I know that kind of causes a trend of people doing that and kind of promotes some inequality and things. But in a real high stress situation, that was sort of our just like, okay, we need an easy out right here. Otherwise we're going to spend $2,000 on a flight and the whole trip's going to be askew. So
yeah,
there was definitely a lot of that going on.
Okay. So let's fast forward back to the crash and the T-bone. So you just got T-boned and some people had seatbelts and some people didn't, and maybe pick up from there.
Both the drivers got out. They took turns yelling at each other, and then they said, all right, have a nice day. Or at least that's what I assume. because I don't speak French or whatever language they were speaking. It was just like, oh, there's no papers. We don't call anybody. It's just like, you hit my car. Bad. It was so unique, and I was amazed. I had never expected that whole situation. But we got to the hotel that night, just like driving through the night, and the guy's truck. And this is just a guy. You can't rent a car in Guinea because maybe there isn't demand, or maybe no one wants a non-local driving a car in the local traffic. I don't know what it is, but there's no rental car companies, at least that I saw, or I believe we tried to rent a car and couldn't.
Okay.
This is just a guy in his truck. And when we got to the airport, we had our local fixer guy bring 2 guys in their trucks, and we got to pick from those 2. And his truck had the check engine light on by the time we got to the hotel that night. And so we had to get a new driver the next morning because we were going to be way out in the jungle and rural roads, and we couldn't have a truck that would be in that condition. So we actually didn't even keep that truck for more than 12 hours. And so our new driver got there the next day. I soon came to find out that the roads absolutely required the best vehicle possible. There were certain times when the potholes on one lane, like one side of the road, would totally engulf the car. So like a lifted Toyota Land Cruiser the roof would be below the oncoming traffic lane. Like these were 8-foot potholes that would eat the whole car.
What?
And Eric, who has traveled to 130 countries at that point, said, these are the worst roads I have ever seen. And he's seen like a magnitude more roads than anyone else I know. And they were real rough. It was an adventure just to drive anywhere.
Maybe it would have been better on bikes.
Oh man, that would be super fun. I don't know how locals would treat the white guys on the bikes, but that would make it even more of an adventure. That'd be so fun.
Yeah, right. Are they driving on the same side of the car as we do, or are they on the opposite side?
Same side of the road. The traffic habits were certainly peculiar, but I think that was just me, the stupid American that doesn't, I haven't been exposed to too much stuff. But I think I probably could have driven on most of the roads, and I probably would have driven a lot slower than our driver and the guys in our group, but I don't know how to drive sticks, so I didn't get that privilege.
So from that point, what happened from there?
We get our new driver, Mamadou, and he's got a perfect Land Cruiser for what we're doing. We even drove it through a river, actually, on the border of Guinea and Guinea-Bissau that went up to the windows. Like, it had a snorkel on it, the truck, and I think we had 12 flat tires total, if not a few more. But it was, now that we had that new driver, that everything was good. The first guy didn't really speak French or English, so it was going to be a rough trip with him. So the driver we had was perfect, and we set out on a 2-day drive to the easternmost point of the country to climb Mont Richard Molar on the border of Guinea and Cote d'Ivoire. And the 2 guys I'm with have done 80 country high points, and Eric had done 130 or something at that point. And this one is extra special because there's only 5 in the world that count for 2 countries where the high point is on the exact border.
Okay.
And so this one's like, they're geeking out. They're really excited that they get to climb one of the 5. And like I said, 2-day drive, the whole time we're probably going 15 miles an hour. The roads are that rough.
Wow. And
it's like you're hitting your head on the ceiling. You're holding the grip the whole time, and just like, it was rough. I was amazed. But we get to Mont Richard Molar, and the hotel's $5. It's perfect. Got electricity and running water. It's a UNESCO World Heritage Site, too, because of the mountain gorilla population. And so we actually had to pay for permits for this, and we actually did, surprisingly. And one of the guy that Eric was in contact with in Conakry, who runs the World Heritage Site, I guess, he actually drove the 2-day trip just to tell us, you're good to go, and find us guides in the local town. So after seeing that, we really realized just how much tourism this country actually gets. He spent 2 days on the most miserable roads just to, like, give us permission for this.
Wow.
And it was just, I don't know, definitely the most beautiful climb we had. We could hear the gorillas the whole day. Didn't see any, but there's pineapples growing out of the ground right by the trail, and it's just like exotic, beautiful jungle, virgin jungle. We're cutting out with a machete to get up to the top. And I drank 3 liters of water in the first, I don't know, third of the day. And that's all I carried. It was so hot.
Oh, wow.
And so I brought aqua tabs, but not any other type of water filtration. And so by the time we were getting near the top, I was dying. That's so dehydrated.
Oh.
One of the guides told me where I could fill up my bottle. I popped 2 aqua tabs in it, and I was so thirsty, I ignored all reason and just started taking some down just to quench my thirst.
Oh.
That definitely didn't pay off for the rest of the trip. I had pretty bad stomach problems the rest of the time, which, looking back, I attribute to that choice.
Oh, yeah, 100%. Oh.
Right before we started that climb, the 2 guides told us we should have, it was probably 8 in the morning, and they said we should have left at 3 a.m. We're never going to make it in time. And Serge, through his French and their broken French, communicated that he had climbed Everest and we were going to be fine. And so when we got down, he was all like joyful and telling them that we finished in 10 hours. And so we were having a good time with the guys. I really enjoyed their company. They were funny, even though we don't speak the same language. We were like cracking jokes and stuff the whole time.
That's kind of funny.
Yeah. So from there, we had another day drive on similar roads to the border of Senegal. And the day that we climbed that one was on Christmas, which made it extra interesting, I guess, for me. I've never been away from family on Christmas. And so Christmas morning, I'm waking up to the mosque speakers that tell you when to pray, I think. But real loud, like, oh man, it doesn't feel like Christmas today. And we took motorcycle taxis 4 hours to the border of Senegal. And we took them because the road was so steep, the Land Cruiser couldn't get down it. As we're getting over there, we realized that there were black mamba snakes in that part of the continent. And so I don't know if you know what those are, but it's like it's a very venomous snake. If you get bitten, I think it's like 30 minutes until you can't speak anymore because you're paralyzed.
Yeah.
And so we realized we needed rubber boots. And we got these rubber boots, but I'm a large man. I'm 6'4", and I'm probably 100 pounds heavier than anyone I saw in the country of Guinea. And so they do not have size 13 rubber boots. So I was wearing size 11 rubber boots. And so the whole hike on that high point, I'm just grinding the skin off between my toes. And so it was a, you know, I was gritting my teeth on that one. It was a good adventure. We didn't see any snakes, thank God. But when we did get up to the top, there was a pack of baboons barking at us. And I turn over to Serge, kind of quiet, and like, are those dangerous? Are those baboons? And he's like, yeah, those are baboons. Have you ever seen one before? Oh, no, I haven't. Should we be worried about them? And he goes, only if you get close to them. We're fine over here. And then we stop for a second, pull out the GPS to see where the true summit of the mountain is. And Eric goes, well, that's where we're going. So we just kind of slowly creeped them off the top and climbed onto that summit and just waited there for a second to make sure it was the tallest point around. And then I was so excited to get the hell out of there and be rid of those baboons. They were freaking me out.
What number summit was that out of the 8?
This was 7.
So
we had one more after this.
Okay, so you have one more.
Yeah, getting to the tail end of the trip, the last one was Guinea-Bissau, and we had 2 contenders. And so for Guinea-Bissau, same thing, drove about a day on the road from the Senegal high point. And as far as I'm aware, Guinea is like, it's smaller than Lower Peninsula, Michigan in total landmass. Like, it's not a very big country, but a lot of these days of this trip we're driving just because of how slow it is.
Yeah.
But we get to the Guinea-Bissau border maybe 2 hours before sundown. And like, okay, let's run up this one real quick, survey it, come back, we'll get a place to sleep and find the other one that's going to take a little longer tomorrow. And we're on the top of that one, totally fine, no problems. We get back, and our driver is held at gunpoint by 2 men all dressed in black with black berets on. And these are Kalashnikovs, or at least that's what they look like to a non-gun guy to me. Like, it looks like a movie. And they're yelling at him, and they've got the guns drawn. And we see GNP, it's the Guinea National Police, coming to see what we're up to. Security was pretty high in Guinea just because the recent military coup kind of, everybody's on edge about foreign influence and people at the borders and stuff. And so we get back in, and our driver is trying to calm everybody down, and then they see us, and that really sparks their interest. And so they come over and yell at us, but they don't speak French or English. They speak the local dialect. And so we got no idea what's going on. Our driver has to translate for us to Serge, who speaks French. Our driver doesn't speak English.
Yeah.
And so Eric and I, we don't know anything that's going on, the whole interaction. And it was maybe 25 minutes, or it was maybe 5, and I was just freaking out. But it felt like quite a long negotiation, and especially to have no idea what's going on. But by the time that we start hearing numbers, I know numbers in French just from being there for a couple of weeks at that point. Like, oh, thank God, we're just going to pay them. Like, but normally when we're paying these bribes, they're like 5,000 Guinea francs, which is, I think it was like $2.50 US at the time.
Yeah.
$2.50. And so they're saying numbers like 200,000. Like, oh man, we really screwed up. They know they can ask for quite a bit here. And so Serge turns to Eric, real calm, and okay, please go get that from the truck. He gets it out. We give it to them, and they say, this is more a 300,000 problem. Okay, sure, we'll get you another 100,000, and same thing, 400.
What?
Like, uh-oh, this is getting expensive. Like, if they keep doing this, we're going to run out of cash here. And at 400,000, they said, you're good, but if we see you do this again, you're going to jail. And that whole negotiation, I was just trying not to defecate my pants, and I'm just fantasizing about how the Guinea prison cell is going to look like and how long I'm going to have to be there. And
oh man!
So that was certainly the greatest relief of that trip. Was once that was over, I just felt like, oh, nothing else will trump this. I was so relaxed after that. Like, everything was just a fun adventure, and there was like, that certainly wasn't going to happen again. So, okay, we're probably good.
Man,
We got the bad part out of the way.
yeah, I could definitely see like that situation getting you pretty sick to your stomach from anxiety, right? Not knowing what's going on and ooh.
And that was a week after I had been drinking the mountain water too, so I was already kind of on the brink all the time. And so, that didn't help.
Oh man, that's no good. So that was the last one, and so that completed the trip then?
Yeah, we had one more, but it was unproblematic and quite fun. So nothing crazy after that. That covered all 8 countries. It took about 3-4 weeks.
Okay.
We were there for.
We'll move on now. You answered a lot of my questions I had.
Sweet.
Can you explain to everyone what the Camino de Santiago is and walk us through that?
Yeah, the Camino de Santiago is a pilgrimage in Spain. There are a lot of different caminos in that area that end in Santiago. I was on the Camino Francés, which starts right on the border of Spain and France up in the mountains, and then goes all the way to Santiago, which is basically the northwest corner of Spain. And some people take it all the way to the ocean, which is a couple more days walk. It's a religious pilgrimage, and I'm not religious, but I like hiking. And so it was something I was very intrigued about. It was actually a trip proposed by my girlfriend's mother, and she was going to go with my girlfriend and do it, but they figured that they wouldn't have fun if it was just the two of them for a whole month. Like, they would start bickering and things if they spent that much time together. And so the plan was to have me and one of her mom's friends come along halfway through. And so I only did 2 weeks of walking. So I kind of got a casual hike out of it. I didn't have to do the whole thing. It still counts as long as you walk 100 kilometers from Santiago there. But I don't know if any purists would count my effort. But it was a very fun, just, every night you stop in some tiny little town out in the middle of nowhere that you walk to, and you get to try some local wine and get some food, and there's a great amount of socialization with the other people that are hiking. So maybe you won't hike with them all day, but once you get into the town, you kind of have your group that you walk with every day because people stop in similar spots. And so you get to know these people from all over Europe, and there was a few people from South America and Mexico and a couple other Americans, but mostly Europeans that hike the Camino.
Okay. Nice. And how many days? You said 2 weeks?
Yeah, it was about 2 weeks. I think I walked maybe 400 kilometers from León to Santiago.
That was my next question. How far was it? What made you run a marathon with no training and then also do a century on a bike with no training? Is that your dad?
My dad definitely had a good influence on that. I think the conversation kind of started as I did the century prior to the marathon.
Okay.
And the century was he thought I could do. Like, it was going to be real hard as my first bike ride in a couple of years, but he figured, this is doable. You don't have to go that fast. You can coast, and, time isn't really the issue. You'll be able to do it, just nutrition. And he ran support on that along with my Uncle Heath, and not really my uncle. So they ran support. I did it with 2 buddies, and that was great. And it was I was super proud of that I was able to do that. And then I kind of thought, like, okay, that's my biking for the year. I did what I set out to do with biking. Let's switch sports. And so the marathon was met with a lot more pushback. Like, you're going to hurt yourself, or that's not something that can be done. And I figured I probably couldn't do it myself. I'd have to run it with a friend. And so that was the hardest part, was convincing somebody to do it. I was ready to go. But as soon as the guy I did it with, Albertus, as soon as his dad, who's a medical doctor, said, "You will die, it's physically impossible," he was in. And we just started off from it wasn't even an official race, just I'm going to run 26.2 miles today. And we started off from his apartment in East Lansing, and we ran all around the city to the Capitol building and just did a real long route and recorded on the Apple Watch. And it was painful, but neither one of us even had the thought of quitting. We knew that if we just grit our teeth and buckled down, we would be able to do it.
Yeah. What kind of bike did you ride on for that century? Do you remember?
Yeah, I rode a Trek road bike that I borrowed from Andy Thompson, one of my dad's buddies, that had electronic shifting, and it was sweet. I wish I knew the model, but it was like feather light, and just that really made things a lot easier. My buddies were on heavier. One of them did it on a mountain bike, and I had the cushy, like, I wore one of my dad's kits, and like I got hooked up with all the gear for that one for sure.
That's awesome. What about for the marathon? What kind of shoes did you rock?
I started in a pair of Nike, some kind of React shoes, just like I think they're meant for running, but it was just like my pair of tennis shoes. And probably 5 miles in, I started getting blisters already and went like, oh, shoot, okay. And so I switched over to some Hoka. I think they were speed goats of some kind, maybe the 3.
Yeah, if your dad was involved, they were probably speed goats.
Yeah, he's in love with those old models.
Yeah,
yeah, but the blistering situation, I don't know how a marathon runner, like someone who does that frequently and trains for that, how their feet look at the end. But I had on both feet blisters from the ball of my foot to the heel.
I believe
just like totally filled with fluid. It was pretty gnarly.
I can only imagine. And how did you push through that pain on the feet? Because I knew that's where most of the pain was going to come in. And did you have any other issues like with your calves or the bottoms of your feet or any other muscle groups down there? Or was it just the blisters?
Around mile 20, both Bert and I would just get a total like quad cramp and have to lay on the ground for a second and let it subside. Like couldn't move the leg. It was really significant. I got a little bit of that on the century, but it was significant on the run. Both calves and quads just totally seizing up. I don't know about the pain. I'm sure I was taking ibuprofen or something, but it wasn't. By that point, we were so close that it was totally negligible how much pain we were in. Like it wasn't. It was just like, oh, we did it. We're so close. Like this last little bit is just what we have to pay for completing this. It isn't like it wasn't a deterrent at all.
You were at 20 miles and you were going to finish it no matter what.
Oh yeah. I mean, we would have crawled if we had to. We were so excited at that point. The mood had improved significantly by the time we got to 20.
Now, how about you talk about this epicness in New Hampshire and what's that all about, and explain how that went about and what you did there.
New Hampshire was kind of my first introduction to, you could call it mountaineering. I don't know if everybody would that's climbed in the winter in New Hampshire. The mountains aren't that tall, but the weather is some of the worst in the world. And so close to Michigan, kind of, you can get real mountaineering conditions without the need to worry about altitude, and you can day hike most of them. And it's mainly just that it's close. But to give you an idea of the weather, the day before our 2023 most recent trip, as we were driving to New Hampshire, it was the coldest recorded temperature in the continental U.S. or the U.S. as a whole, and I think it was the U.S. as a whole, and it was on the top of the tallest mountain in the range, Mount Washington. It was negative 108 without wind chill. Maybe, no, with wind chill, with wind chill. Either way, crazy cold. My fact isn't perfect, but you're going to die type of temperatures.
Yeah, exactly. Oh, the wind's probably pretty brutal there as well then at the top of Mount Washington.
Oh, yeah. I mean, I got more Mount Washington facts that are probably should be fact checked, but if I'm right, I believe the highest recorded wind speed on Mount Washington was 236 miles an hour, which was also the highest recorded speed in the whole world for a long time. Like it got beat within the past 10, 20 years, but it was, that's just insane, like incomprehensible wind speed up there.
Yeah.
But New Hampshire was kind of my introduction to the guy trips that my dad and all his buddies went on, and an introduction to what I felt like was a serious climbing trip. And the first couple were definitely filled with a lot more suffering than the last couple. Now that I'm older and more like I've, trained more and more specifically for things like that, and I'm able to keep up with the group, and I also have an expectation of what kind of conditions I'm going to have to face, and so that makes the trips way more enjoyable.
Yeah.
But I definitely, it totally got me into it. Not that I wasn't already fantasizing about big mountains before that trip as a kid, but now that I've done a bunch of years of that, it's pretty obvious to me that has continued to stoke the fire on my mountaineering ambition.
Was the 17, was that all in 1 year?
No, that's over the course of the time that I've been going.
Okay.
So there's 48 4,000 footers out there.
Yeah.
And that's kind of the cream of the crop. That's the first peak bagging goal that people go for out there for the most part, is climb all 48.
Okay.
And then there's also people who want to climb all 48 in the winter. And 3 of the guys in my group did that. And we keep going back. After the trip that they got their winter 48, there was talks of okay, what do we do on the winter guide trips now? But I think we all kind of love it so much that we just keep going back. No need to reinvent the wheel. This is awesome. We're just going to keep climbing the same mountain.
Right. So for training, to get ready for this type of thing, what do you do for training? Are you running? Do you do any biking? What do you have going on?
Because my ambition vastly I don't know. It's way more than my ability, especially my technical ability. My training is, you could say, unfocused. I don't really know exactly what I need because I don't know what the next big trip is going to look like. And so, especially this winter and the past winter, my training has mainly been stay in good cardiovascular shape, lift weights to kind of maintain where I'm at, but not a real focus on anything, just because my ambitions of climbing expedition-style mountains are so far away that it's almost disheartening to train at that level if I'm not going to do it for 5 years. So my goals right now are just to kind of maintain and improve my cardio shape. For New Hampshire, I did some stair climbs with a weighted backpack at one of the big tall buildings in East Lansing where I live now, and a lot of running outside, even in the winter.
What kind of gear do you have on or carry with you on the winter climbs? I mean, what kind of coats and pants and boots and what else? What are you carrying?
Oh, yeah. This is a very exciting question to me. I'm a total gear guy. That's I have so much fun being out there, but to kind of live vicariously through the mountain climbing world, I definitely, especially in the past little bit, have been totally getting down with all the best gear and things, doing research, seeing what people like. And I always bother people when I see them out on trails and stuff like, oh, you have this and that boot. Like, what do you think about that? I'm trying to learn. And I'm also, the job I'm working right now is at Moose Jaw Mountaineering. And my official title is Gear Wizard. So I'm totally all in on the gear. As far as New Hampshire gear goes, we carry crampons or snowshoes depending on the trail conditions and what we expect out of the day. I always carry trekking poles. Our group wears these old discontinued Keene Summit County boots that are, I think they're rated for -20. Mine certainly aren't. They're pretty old now. Like real high top Keene boots is what most of the guys are rocking. Big, thick wool socks, sock liners. A bunch of our group too has been taping hand warmers to the top of their feet just for the toe warmth. And then as far as the pants go, I don't ever really wear insulated pants, just like a pair of soft shell pants, no long johns even, just because you're really trying not to sweat, obviously. So going uphill wearing insulated pants, I will just sweat the whole time. So I can't do that. Just like a thin, basic soft shell pant. And then as far as coats go, on each climb, I'm probably bringing four coats, maybe. Yeah, probably 4. Get like a merino base layer and probably this season I've been loving the Alpha Tech for a mid layer. It's like a really breathable, high loft mid layer. And then for coats, I normally bring soft shell coat, and then I've got a Proton from Arc'teryx, which is a synthetic 80-gram weight, lightweight coat. And then I'm bringing a shell coat, so like a really thick raincoat, not very breathable. For the real high wind speeds and things, you definitely want to have that shell to protect you from the wind and the precipitation. And then my favorite, like, pièce de résistance, the best coat, is the really thick parka. And so I've got a giant, bright, blind your eyes orange Nerona parka that is just, like, if I put it on right now inside, I would start sweating almost immediately. It is just the warmest, most beautiful jacket. But that's super important, kind of having the oh shit coat. If the weather starts getting really bad, you want to have something that's a lot warmer than you think you'll need, but also just for stopping. Whenever you stop while you're going uphill, most of the time I'm wearing a t-shirt if we're in the trees to try and prevent sweating. And so I throw that thing on right away just because your body heat is just all gone almost immediately when you stop wearing that kind of thing out in the cold.
That makes a lot of sense. Yeah, you don't want to sweat because if you got a ton of sweat and you have to stop in the cold, that's not fun.
Oh, yeah.
We've done plenty of fat bike riding in the winter, and stopping when you're sweating, you'll get cold very, very fast.
Yeah, and then your temperature, you can't regulate it. It's just, it's a whole mess. That's been a couple years in the making for me to be able to really regulate. And this year, I've just started to figure out what works for me, but
nice.
It takes a while to figure out what you need.
What are you doing for your hands? What are you doing? Mittens, gloves?
My hands run super hot. Some people in our group are wearing Black Diamond Absolute mitts, which are like 2 pounds a piece and 4 inches thick and just crazy with hand warmers. Like you could wear them in Antarctica, but I've got some OR Alpi mitts, which are also Antarctica rated mittens, but lesser than the Black Diamond ones. Those get broken out sometimes. I've got some OR gloves too. I really just stick to liner gloves most of the time. Unless I'm above the trees and it's real windy, my hands just sweat without much warmth being available. They stay warm, which I'm super lucky. Lots of people struggle with that, but that kind of just leads to me not wearing that much on the hands.
That makes sense, for sure. When you said that, I thought back to, it was either last year or the year before, my buddy Rob and I, we were up at the Cadillac Pathway riding fat bikes, and it was a cold day. I think it was a single-digit day with some wind, right? So wind chill was below zero.
Oh, yeah.
And we've got our gloves on and our full gear so we don't get cold while we're riding, and we're riding along, and we've been riding for a little bit. We go past this couple, and the girl is in front of the guy, and she's got no gloves on, and my brain was just mind blown. Like, how are your hands even warm without gloves on out here? It just I just couldn't understand it, but it was crazy. My buddy Rob couldn't understand it either, so but
oh yeah. Especially on a trip like that, like you're talking going biking and below zero temperatures, it's real weird to see how different people's bodies react to that. People are so... You would think we all just need big warm mittens, but there's a lot of people who are totally different.
Yeah, that's the truth. Interesting. What other sports have you done in your past?
I played lacrosse for 10 years, just throughout growing up for the school team, and I've been hiking consistently my whole life. My parents, especially my dad, have promoted that so much for me that's always been a consistent thing in my life. Like our family vacations, we went to Florida once, but we took a lot of vacations, and it was always, here are the 5 hikes we want to do while we're here. Maybe we'll spend a day in town, but that was kind of how my family bonded, and it was just such a consistent thing that I enjoyed. And so the hiking has always been very important to me, but just in the past couple of years, it started to become a focus of mine and something that I want to get really good at.
We tend to do vacations like that as well, but as our kids are getting older, they are starting to rebel on the biking and the hiking, and they want more, I think, of the beaching.
I think I went through that phase a little bit and was a little upset seeing all my friends doing more traditional family vacations, but after a year or two, I came around.
Yeah. We'll see what happens on our end with that.
Yeah, there's hope.
Have you ever done an official run race or bike race?
I have done both, but not very consistently. Kind of spaced out quite a bit. I did a 5K, which is the only race I've done that was organized, and it was like a zombie 5K or something, where they had a bunch of actors with makeup that would like jump out at you behind trees, and they would like lay in tall grass and grab at your ankles and stuff. I did that with my dad. That was like a entertaining and a fun run, but just cool to see all the people out dressed up and stuff.
Yeah, I could definitely see that taking your mind off running too.
I think that was the idea. But the cycling races, I've probably done a little under 10, but all kind of maybe at least 8 years ago. There was a streak where I bought a nice felt road bike and had a mountain bike as well and was racing a little bit, but mostly just going with my dad and our family to races and racing in the kid races or the shorter ones. And it was, I don't know if I would have liked it anymore if it wouldn't have been for my dad's success, but it definitely was weird that he was, not weird, I guess. I knew why. I wasn't training as a kid riding bikes, but I was so much worse than him that it just made it like not super fun.
Yeah.
I had a hard time not comparing myself to him, and so I definitely didn't really get into it too much. I tried a few races, but after a while it was enough for me.
Well, that's perfectly fine. So why do you love climbing so much, and what keeps you going with that?
I've been asked that question quite a bit. I think there's something for it, something for me with the focus that it takes when you're doing something that you know has dangerous consequences. The feeling, like the headspace that you get in when you're doing something that you have to focus all your energy on because you could be injured if you don't, is zen in a way, or it's just peaceful. It's something I seek. Like it can, anything you're worrying about that day, or something's not going right in your life, it's so quieted by that for me. There's no other way to replicate that, because you're not going to go to the gym and put yourself in a dangerous spot. Like there's just certain things that you get yourself into, or that you put yourself in, that you have to think so hard, and I love it. I love that feeling.
That Africa trip sounds like you had plenty of danger going on.
Yeah, and I mean, that wasn't even in the mountains. That was just like
right.
logistical danger.
Right. Oh man. Okay.
But my love for the mountains, I've definitely been feeding it lately. Right now, I'm planning to do that for my career. I've got a job at RMI Expeditions this summer, just working like warehouse logistics, putting together clients' gear for them and helping out the guides with things. I'm doing that really to get a picture of what could be to come for me. I think from what the knowledge I have now, I would have fun doing that.
Yeah.
But there's a lot of steps to get to becoming a guide. Right now, that's kind of my plan. I kept thinking about the other career paths I could go down, and every time my first question was kind of, how many days of the year will I be able to spend in the mountains? How many vacation days will I have for trips if I am said profession? And I kind of got to the point where I thought I should just climb mountains for the job. And if I hate that, I can go get another job. But I think I would regret it if I didn't pursue this to its fullest extent for me as my start.
I think you're probably doing the right thing, because it's something that you love, and I think you'll end up liking it anyway.
That's the idea. I'm pretty optimistic about most things, and this certainly isn't an exception. So I hope I love it just as much as I think I will.
So other than that, because it sounds like you'll be doing some things and taking people on some climbs and whatnot, do you have anything on your calendar for yourself this year that's kind of you're looking forward to, that's big?
Up until the summer, I'm going on at least one, if not two, rock climbing trips. I'm going at one to Red River Gorge with the MSU Climbing Club. I've really found a nice place with them. I really like that whole crew. I'll be going down there with them. And then I just started fantasizing about trad climbing, like traditional climbing. So I'm kind of hoping to convince somebody to go trad climbing with me and teach me a bunch of stuff. But that's sort of a dangerous proposition to get yourself in as the mentor with someone who doesn't have too much knowledge. You got to rely on them to the extent where the people I've asked are a little nervous to bring me. But I'm hoping maybe if I climb enough in the next couple weeks that I can get the stamp of approval and maybe have somebody take me out and do some trad climbing too before the summer. And then as far as the summer goes, with my job, I get one attempt at Rainier for free. Oh. So I'm super excited about that. That'll be that's definitely on my mind in my training now. I'll probably climb Mount Olympia too in Washington State, which I know is kind of a sought after one out there. But the main goal is just to let the guides let me tag along on their trip so I can learn as much as I can.
Heck yeah. I think that sounds like a good plan. And I think based on your past, I think you spend some time climbing, you're going to get to do, someone will take you on and teach you the ropes there with that venue that you want to do that route.
Yeah, I think so. I'm pretty persistent and I'm pretty lucky, so I'm sure somebody will take a liking to me and bring me up a couple mountains. So.
Heck yeah. So speaking of mountains or climbs, so if someone were wanting to try something like this, and what mountain or climb anywhere in the world that you've done would you think would be a good starting point for someone to go try it? Maybe it's got great views and it's just, something. What would you recommend as a starter?
I still feel personally that I'm still in my amateur era of the sport, so I don't know if I'm like I'm not really speaking from a place of authority. What's the best thing to do? But I think Mount Washington, that is like summer or winter, really makes people happy.
Okay.
There's just it's easy to get somebody to love it, bringing them up there. The people that I have gone up with and brought up there have contacted me a bunch of times about bringing them back. So to develop kind of a love for it, I think that's awesome. It's hard enough where you feel accomplished, but it's not, as long as you keep an eye on the weather, it's pretty non-dangerous if you're doing it in the summer.
Yeah.
Granted, people have died, 100 or something over the years, but you just be smart. You got to bring a winter coat in the summer even, but it's just like it feels serious enough where you're really diving in, especially if that's your first one.
I ask too because it's maybe a selfish ask. I feel that when the kids are out of our house, I think my wife and I, we both like to mountain bike, and she likes to hike more than I do, but I still like to hike. But when we're hiking and, like you said, with a little more at risk, I find it a little more fun. So something maybe to put on my things to do, my bucket list, as we get older and we start traveling a little more together, to maybe start climbing some of these cool mountains. I think that'd be fun.
Totally. Yeah. One other one, just now that you've given more of a scope of that, if you are going to make it out to the Northeast, I would recommend doing Katahdin as well, which is the tallest mountain in Maine. That's actually where the AT ends. So I'm sure, if you go in the summer, you'll meet somebody super interesting while you're up there, and they'll be having their AT moment, or at least that's what happened to me. That was fun to kind of share that moment with a guy that had just finished his through hike. But there's a part of it called the Knife's Edge, which I don't know how dangerous it is, but it feels cool. It feels exposed, and it's super fun.
What was that one called again? And that's pretty close
to Mount Washington.
What was that one called again?
That's called Katahdin. I think it's in Baxter State Park in Maine, but it's the tallest mountain in Maine. That's an easy way to remember.
It's definitely something to put on the list.
Oh, yeah.
If there was any advice that you could give to anyone that wants to start doing stuff like this, what would it be?
Like I said, too, I'm kind of still an amateur. I'm really my passion exceeds my knowledge. But lately I've been having really good luck with just the people I know that are kind of connected to the sport, asking them who they know that would align with some of the things I'm interested in. And so lately there's this regular that comes into Moose Jaw that's been teaching me so much stuff, like wealth of knowledge. This older guy, Dave, who's just he's really helping me out so that I can learn these things quickly and how to do them correctly and stuff, especially with climbing, rock climbing specifically. But I guess my advice is just ask around. The personal, your personal circle of people, there's probably at least one person who has some good knowledge for you, especially if you're already a little bit into a community of people who want to do the sport thing you want to do, if you want to climb mountains. Michigan Ice Fest was super cool too. And I got in contact with a lot of people who are doing the things that I want to do. And so that was super helpful. I volunteered at that event, and that was such a blast. I felt really at home with all the people that were attending and climbing and guiding and things.
Ask people and go to events so you can meet more people, or volunteer like you did.
Oh, yeah. Or work at Moose Jaw. It's so fun.
Or work at Moose Jaw.
I don't know if that's easy for people to do, but I love it.
Right. Is there a YouTube channel or an athlete that has a good following that offers advice that would help people that you know of?
Man, I think my number one that I look at is Conrad Anker, who is probably the most well-known mountain climber. I don't know that he really provides inspirational, like, David Goggins type of, like, you got to get out of bed and go climb a mountain. But just seeing the stuff that he does is enough for me. Like, he doesn't have to say anything, just like, here's the mountain I climbed, here's how we did it. That gets me so excited. And he's got a lot of, he puts out some good content too, just of like, kind of, you get to see into the process a little bit. So I like checking out his stuff, but especially the movies. Jimmy Chin shoots a lot of documentary style movies that Conrad Anker stars in, I guess you could say.
Okay.
And they're so, I always have goosebumps, and I'm ready to go climb a mountain right when the movie's over. So that always gets me excited.
Check out Conrad Anker then.
Yeah, he's a beast. He's an old mountaineer, which is always important. Like, those guys make the choices that don't kill them. So right. He's obvious. He must have something good going on if he's not dead yet.
Seriously. Is there anything else you'd like to say before we sign off? I know we had some technical difficulties, and we're coming up on me taking up 2 hours of your day.
No, I totally appreciate it. Hopefully that wasn't an issue on my end. But there is one thing. So I ask everybody I meet, and I have been asking everybody I meet for at least 2 years, the same question. And so I have that question for you. My question is, what is your passion?
I like sports and athletics, and I really like to see people get better at their sport, whatever it may be. I really like to, and that's part of why I started the podcast, to try to pull out maybe some helpful tips for people listening to implement into their own training or lives to make them better at what they're doing. I have a passion. Maybe it's just for helping people. You align it with sports and athletics, and that's kind of been my passion. I've always been involved in sports, always helped athletes out, coaching, and so I think that's my passion right there.
Very nice. That I definitely could have guessed based on the podcast episodes I was listening to this week, but that was going to be up there.
Right.
But that's awesome. I like that a lot.
Awesome, man. Well, where can people find you on the web if they want to connect with you? Do you have something they can follow your journeys on?
I'm pretty bad at posting on social media. I definitely could probably throw a few more trips up there, some more photos or something. But if you want to find me, it's just Kahler with a dot in the middle, KAH.LER on all the platforms. So
okay,
hit me up. I'll go climbing with you.
Nice. So you can find Kahler there. That's KAH.LER.
Perfect.
Cool. Well, Kahler, I've enjoyed learning more about you today, and I thank you for sharing your journey with me and the listeners. I'm glad you made it out of Africa with all that craziness, and I thank you very much for coming on the podcast today.
For sure. I appreciate you letting me tell my story.
This was a lot of fun, and to all the listeners, gratitude. You have just listened to Unpacking the Athlete.